Going to get ready to begin in just about a minute. As soon as I know that YouTube is working, we can begin. Just 1 minute, bear with me. I'm confused, Nzhdeh, because it seems to be showing your screen already,
Okay.
which is...
Shall I stop share now?
Stop sharing now, and then we'll start
Okay.
again after after a moment. Okay. Hopefully everything is right, and if you're on Zoom and everything looks good, please put a note in the chat saying all is well. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Mamagonian. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs for the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research, NASR. We're grateful to you for making time in your day to spend some of it with us. And we're very grateful to our friends and colleagues at the Ararat Eskijian Museum who are collaborating with us on today's program. I would like to ask our dear friend, the museum's director, Maggie Goshen, to say a few words. Maggie.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nasser, for accepting and hosting today's event. And Nzhdeh, it's always a pleasure to meet you again virtually now. And even though we met a few times in Los Angeles, hopefully we'll have a chance in the future to have an in-person. For me, this is a very important subject. Of course, it's dear to my heart. My first trip to Armenia was 1973, and I was right across at the Armenia Hotel at that time. And that was my first eye-opener to go to the museum. I was in an enchanted world to see the collection. Of course, there were restrictions there coming from a different regime, but subsequently, every time I was in Yerevan, this place had a special a place for me. And all the beautiful museums there are in Armenia, there's no question. So I'm looking forward for today's lecture. Hopefully, we'll have a sequel in the future, or we will invite you maybe in person to do in Los Angeles on a larger scale. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Maggie. Let me just briefly make a couple of announcements of upcoming events this month. For those of you who are in the Boston area, this coming Thursday of next week, we will be holding the 4th annual Vartan Grigorian Memorial Lecture, which will be given this year by Huri Berberian and Tallinn Grigor on their new book, The Armenian Woman, Minoritarian Agency and the Making of Iranian Modernity. This will be in Belmont, Mass. At the Nasser Center, and it's co-sponsored by the Mashtots Chair in Armenian Studies at Harvard. This is in person only, no online. Sorry about that, but if you're able to come in person, we'd love to see you. On Saturday, May 10th, we will join with Yala, the International Armenian Literary Alliance, the Zorab Center, to bring the next installment of the Literary Lights programs with poet Gregory Janikian, author of Nostalgia for the Future, who will be in conversation with poet Susan Barba on Zoom and YouTube. This is a webinar on Saturday, May 10th at 12 p.m. Eastern, noontime. On Monday, May 12th, we were glad to join with our friends at the Promise Armenian Institute and others. At 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Dr. Anush Suni will present Material Afterlives of Genocide, Violence, Memory, and Landscapes of Ruins in Van. This is a lecture at UCLA at Bunch Hall and online via Zoom and YouTube, courtesy of the Promise Armenian Institute. And then finally, on May 19th, we will again be working with our friends at the Arat Eskijian to present Dr. Talin Sujian and her talk, Kept with Care, Letters from Purgatory. This is a webinar on May 19th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Hello, everyone. Good, hello. Now let me introduce our speaker today. It's my pleasure to introduce him for the second time in the past couple of months, because we had him with us at Nasser back in March, which was great. And Dr. Nzhdeh Yeranyan is a cultural anthropologist who specializes in the preservation and management of cultural heritage, particularly in crisis, conflict, and post-conflict situations. His research focuses on the colonial and post-colonial archaeology of Armenia, the Bronze Age landscape, and the preservation of the cultural heritage of Nagorno-Karabakh, including the protection of museums and collections. He is the Deputy Scientific Director of the History Museum of Armenia. He's a lecturer in the Department of Cultural Studies at Yerevan State University, and at present he is a Fulbright visiting scholar at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And indeed, we had the pleasure to hear him speak on shattered heritage museums, memories, and cultural loss in Artsakh a couple of months ago. And today we will hear him on Armenia through 30 objects, stories from the History Museum of Armenia. And following his presentation, we welcome your questions. Please use the Zoom Q&A function, and we will get to as many as possible. Thank you, and Nzhdeh, it's all yours.
Thank you, dear Mark. Thank you. I greet everyone, and I'd like to express my special thanks to Maggie Gorfman, the director of Arat Eskijian Museum, for this initiative and the wonderful tour of the museum a few months ago in LA. And I'd like to emphasize to our listeners who have not yet visited to definitely visit the Arat Eskijian Museum. Thanks to National Association for Armenian Studies and Research, and especially Mark Mamigonian for organizing and hosting this webinar. I would also like to express my gratitude to my colleagues at the History Museum of Armenia, whose work makes it possible to expand, preserve, restore, present, and promote the museum's collections through this and different other events. And thank you all for participating to this event. Today I am going to speak on an interesting topic. The title tells you what it's about. But before I get to the main discussion, I would like to briefly mention the history of the History Museum of Armenia. The first attempt to establish a secular museum, not only in Armenia, but in South Caucasus during the years of Tsarist rule, was made by Khachatur Abovyan. As the inspector of the Yerevan Provincial School, he collected archaeological and ethnographic objects of museum value involving teachers and students in this work. Abovyan centralized the collected materials in the Armenian Provincial Students Cabinet, which he himself created in 1846, adjacent to the Yerevan School. Later, Mukherjee Hrimian Hayrik, the other Armenian clergyman, and other clergymen made attempts to create rooms and museum adjacent to various monasteries, like Echmiadzin Hayrikyan Museum, Echmiadzin Gevorkyan Museum, Echmiadzin Pedagogical Museum, and etc. Later, after the regular excavations that begin in Ani in 1904, various museums and antiquities were opened in different buildings in the area that functioned as museums. However, the real real steps toward the creation of secular museum in the classical sense were taken a few years later during the First Republic of Armenia by the decision of the parliament on September 9, 1990. The building of the Yerevan Boys Gymnasium was chosen as the location for the ethnographic anthropological museum library. Its foundation was to be the collection and property of the Museum of the Armenian Ethnographic Society operating in Tiflis, as well as the Armenian collections of the Caucasian Museum. The ethnographer and folklorist Yeranyan Lalayan was appointed as the first director of the museum. He actively worked to bring the materials of the museum on the Armenian Ethnographic Society from Tiflis to Yerevan to form the first collection of the newly created National Museum. In the program about the importance of the establishment of the Museum of the Armenian Ethnographic Society, it was said, considering the great importance of an ethnographic museum, both for the independent development of a nation and for the centralization of the development of humanity in a general, it is necessary that we Armenians also have such a museum, and as soon as possible, because Armenian life is changing extremely rapidly and ethnographic objects are being lost. The government of the First Armenian Republic also purchased for the new museum works of art from the exhibition of Armenian artists organized in the same boys' gymnasium in 1990. However, the Republic of Armenia, which was in a difficult military political situation, was unable to implement the establishment of the National Museum as well as other important initiatives of national significance. On December 2, 1920, Soviet rule was established in Armenia, and soon after, on August 20, 1921, the National Museum of Armenia was established under the name of State Central Museum of Armenia in a small area of the still half-built House of Culture. Famous intellectuals such as Martiros Saryan, Asharbek Kalantar, Yeranyan Lalayan, Yerevan Shahaziz, and others contributed a lot to this effort. They managed to collect various Armenian museum collections from Tiflis, Moscow, Nor Nakhichevan, Vagar Ani, and other places, which had been created in different years in a part of the former Boys Gymnasium building, which had been converted into the House of Culture, and to organize a national museum, which had been receiving visitors since 1921. In 1922, it was officially named State Central Museum of Armenia. The first director of the museum was the painter Vertanes Arikyan and later Martiros Saryan. By the end of 1922, the museum officially had 6 departments: archaeological, historical, ethnographic, artistic, handicraft, and revolutionary. The revolutionary department of the museum was separated from the State Museum on March 22, 1928, by the decision of the board of the Commissariat of Education, and became an independent institution called the Museum of the Revolution of Armenia. Later, in 1935, the National Gallery and the Museum of Literature and Art were also separated from the collection of the museum in the same building. The History Museum of Armenia, which during the Soviet years was sometimes part of the National Academy of Sciences, sometimes under the Ministry of Culture, and changed its name several times, continues to operate today as one of the main national museums of Armenia, or as it is commonly called, the Mother Museum. It has more than 400,000 exhibits which relate to history and culture from 1.8 million years ago up to present days. Objects are powerful storytellers in history because they provide tangible links to the past. And unlike written records or oral histories, objects often direct insight into the daily lives, values, and technologies of people in different time periods. They help us understand how people lived, what they valued, and how they interacted with their environment. The unique aspect of objects is that they often carry embedded meanings beyond the obvious through their materials, craftsmanship, and use. They reflect the cultural, social, and political context of their time. Objects matter because they are not just relics of the past, but active bearers of cultural memory and identity. First, objects serve as cultural objects. They reflect the values, technologies, and practices of the societies that produced them. And these objects promote emotional connections. And holding an object or simply looking at it in a museum can evoke a personal response. To be honest, this format of presenting the museum and its exhibits is also something new for me as well. And on one hand, I'm free from exhibition halls, spaces, but at the same time, this freedom is challenging, and I'm afraid that I might miss something. Of course, it's impossible to present the entire collection of the History Museum of Armenia or even the entire history of Armenia in one presentation. So I have selected that what I consider to be the 30 most important exhibits, objects that contain important information and messages about their time period, and in some cases, the story of how they came to the museum is interesting and valuable, which has already become an inseparable part of these objects. The museum collections is currently based mainly on the scientific departments where these objects are kept, which are archaeological, numismatic, ethnographic, and objects representing modern and contemporary history, like photographs, sound recordings, documents, manuscripts and testimonies, books, newspapers, personal items, and other types of objects. So let me present this small selection from the collection, trying to keep the chronology, and I would like to point out that all the examples I will discuss and present are original objects, with the exception of 2 items that I will mention and tell their story. According to archaeological sources, the first stages of settlement in Armenia and the Armenian highland are represented by the earliest evidence confirming the existence of primitive men, or Homo erectus, outside the African homeland. The most important of these sources is the Dmanisi, located in Georgia on the southeastern slopes of the Javakheti mountain range in the northern part of the highlands. Recent studies in the territory of Armenia have documented monuments chronologically related to the Dmanisi, including the Haftanak III monument, where the oldest Armenian find kept in the History Museum of Armenia was discovered. And this stone chopper, the earliest stone tool from 1.8 to 1.6 million years ago. The ladder show from the RNE1 cave complex belongs to the period following the Stone Age, the Chalcolithic. The leather show was discovered in the cave Armenia in 2008. Based on the results of the radiocarbon test carried out in the spectrometric laboratories of the University of California, the researchers date this find to from 3600 to 3500 BC. This allows to consider this exceptionally well-preserved, unique find as the oldest leather show in the world. During the early Bronze Age, from 3600 to 2300 BC, the Kura-Araxes culture spread throughout the Armenian highland. With the Shengavitian culture complex forming its core, the workshops unearthed at various sites, along with a significant number of molds used to make weapons, tools, and jewelry, are the best evidence of the unprecedented level of metallurgical development. In the museum, the early Bronze Age Blake, burnished, and bronze pottery is presented in all its diversity. The spiral and bird ornaments characteristic of the pottery impress with their semantic depth. An example of such spiral imagery is one of the oldest bronze objects found in Armenia and exhibited in the museum. This spiral bronze item you see in right part of the screen. The arsenic bronze of the early Bronze Age, as well as casting molds found at various sites, indicate that the Armenian highland was one of the earliest centers for the production and widespread distribution of bronze. One of the best examples of the early Bronze Age in this collection is this Bronze Age necklace discovered at the Gerarot archaeological site in 2002, which is unique in its complete preservation and beauty. Many visitors to the museum often think it's a modern reconstruction, but we have the opportunity to enjoy this unique charm in its original form. The canonical manifestations of early Bronze Age sanctuaries are the ritual hearts and the unprecedented number of portable ritual hearts leave no doubt that in ritual and worship needs of this early Bronze Age community were mainly realized with family or clean sacred halls. The hearts discovered in Shengavit are of different types. They were placed in the center of dwellings and sanctuaries. With the dissolution of the Kura-Araxes community in the last quarter of the 3rd millennium BC, the Shengavit culture complex was expelled from most of the highlands and Middle Bronze Age began after it. During the Middle Bronze Age, burial structures of unprecedented dimensions and luxurious furnishing appeared, while fortified castles and urban settlements became widespread of this period. This pottery of the Middle Bronze Age you see in your screen are with a combination of red and black colors stands out for this period with various scenes depicted of them. The most significant group representing the Middle Bronze Age culture in the material from Great Barrow of the tribal chief of Karashamp from the 22 from late of 2nd, 3rd millennium and beginning of 2nd millennium, considering of silver and electrum cups, gold jewelry, and a silver battle axe, a standard, and parts of armor. The embossed silver goblet from another tomb of Karashamp is one of the most significant finds in Armenian archaeology, whose 6 embossed bands depict the victory of a tribal led by a military leader, or we can also maybe call him king, over enemy tribe in the context of the Indo-European mythological worldview. The top band depicts a hunting scene. The next band shows a battle scene between spearmen and swordsmen, followed by a victory celebration with the sacrifice of a deer and a ritual feast with the king holding a ritual bowl and musician playing lyre and horns. The third decorative band depicts scenes of the offering of booty, the killing scene, and their transfer to the afterlife. The subject is framed at the top and bottom by a procession of lions and leopards. The sixth band depicts a mating scene between a lion and a leopard. The second half of the second millennium BC corresponds chronologically to the late Bronze and early Iron Age. The Lechashen monument is one of exceptional interest in the late Bronze Age period between the 15th and the first half of the 13th century BC. One of the most impressive exhibits in the four-wheeled burial cart dated to the 15th to 14th centuries BC. And this sculpture of a bull on an anchor-shaped base, considered a symbol of power, was attached to the front of the burial carts of tribal chiefs. Beginning in the 12th to 11th centuries BC, Armenia became one of the leading centers of early iron working in the ancient East. Written references to iron working in the Armenian highland and Asia Minor are also preserved in Hittite sources from the 14th to 13th centuries BC. From 12th century BC, the mastery of the iron began in the Armenian highland, which became widespread in the following centuries. The period of widespread use of iron coincided with the formation of stable military units and separate army groups as a result of constant warfare between powerful states of the ancient East in the vicinity of the Armenian highland. The widespread use of iron allowed warriors to be better armed and Eastern rules to maintain larger armies. Of particular interest is a storage vessel from the 10th to 9th centuries BC, discovered in Dvin, which depicts a hunting scene with an archer, a dog, and a deer against the background of starry sky, connected with the worship of celestial luminaries and constellations. Stone idols in the form of human head, dating back to from 10th to 9th centuries, are associated with the worship of sacred ancestors. According to ancient beliefs, the head was the most important part of human body, where the soul resided. The conical heads of these sculptures may indicate their association with the Ding and resembling the deity, their embodiment of heroic warrior. Bronze plate belts were an important part of clothing or armor. Since ancient times, the belt was not only an ornament, but also had magical significance, protecting the wearer from evil forces and bringing strength and success. On the surface of the belts are engraved delicate ornaments, symbols of the sun and celestial bodies, swastikas, running spirals, and other decorative images. Particularly noteworthy are the decorative belts depicting people, animals, war chariots, and sense of warfare and hunting. And an exceptionally interesting early Iron Age exhibit is the solar system model made of bronze plate, which represents an early conception of the geocentric structure of the universe, according to which the 7 planets, including the Sun and the Moon, revolve around the immovable Earth in the center. In the lower section is the ocean, with an X-shaped sign in the center, the symbol of the mother goddess, Mother Earth. The kingdom of Van was the first state in the Armenian highland, which emerged at the beginning of the first millennium BC and became one of the most powerful countries in the ancient East. From Assyrian sources, it is known as Urartu, Uruatri, Arartu. The Urartians themselves called their country Biainili, or Van. Let me say that among the Urartian collections preserved in various museums of the world, the Urartian collection of the History Museum of Armenia occupies an important place, which is represented mainly by materials discovered in Urartian monuments on the territory of nowadays Armenia, and is distinguished not only by its abundance but also its thematic diversity. Due to the abundance of materials, it was extremely difficult for me to select even a group of them. So they represent not only artistic culture, but also numerous examples of Urartian culture and history, language, religion, army, architecture, and everyday life. Let me show you some of them, and it is really a very small part of this collection. And I believe if there will be some questions on these artifacts, on these objects, I will be glad to speak more about Urartian culture and Urartian collection of History Museum of Armenia. In the first quarter of the 2nd century BC, the territories of the collapsed Van Kingdom or Urartu were united into the Armenian state of the Yervanduni dynasty. In 521 BC, Armenia came under the rule of Achaemenid Persia and was divided into 2 satrapies, 13 and 18. After the death of the Persian king Cambyses, the history of rebellions in the Achaemenid Empire and their suppression by Darius I presents interesting episodes in the history of Armenia. Among the rebellious countries, Armenia is also mentioned. For Armenia, the names Armina in Old Persian, Urartu or Urasht in Babylonian, and Harminuia in Elamite are used, with extensive information on the course of the rebellion in Armenia. This is the first text in the world in which the name Armenia is used. In the bas-reliefs of Persepolis, the Armenian delegation is depicted holding a vessel similar to those found in various contemporary monuments in Armenia. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great's victory at the Battle of Gaugamela put an end to the Achaemenid Empire. Armenia was divided into 2 kingdoms, Greater Armenia and Lesser Armenia. The capital of Greater Armenia was moved from Van to Armavir, and according to Moses Horenazi, Yervand IV made Yervandashat the capital. In order to save your time and without discussing the materials of this large collection individually, I will present only a few of them. The post-Urartian objects presented here seem to be a continuation of Urartian culture, revealing the hereditary link that exists between Urartian and early Armenian cultures. In 189 BC, King Antiochus III of the Seleucid Empire was defeated at the Battle of Magnesia. Taking advantage of this, the Seleucid strategy, Artaxerxes and Greater Armenia and Zare in Southern declared themselves independent. Artaxerxes first reunited the Armenian lands and implemented administrative, military, economic, and cultural reforms. The most important of this was the land reform. Special boundary stones were erected between villages and private estates, clearly defining the boundaries between lands belonging to free rural communities and princely or private domains. One of King Artaxerxes' first most notable achievements was the founding of the capital city of Artashat, which remained the political, economic, cultural, and spiritual center of Armenia for more than 500 years. The marble statue of Aphrodite found in Artashat is an exceptional example of Hellenistic art, testifying to the high culture of the Hellenistic capital of Armenia. Notable works of Hellenistic art include cased terracottas depicting women, horsemen, musicians, and other images representing various Hellenistic deities. Glassmaking had reached a high level of development. One of the most important and interesting results of the archaeological study of Artashat is the discovery of clay seal impressions known as bull. According to the ancient practice, official documents, trade agreements, bags with imported or exported goods, boxes, etc., were sealed with impressions made on clay balls. The seal was made with the seal on the state official or the personal engraved ring of the merchant. After breaking the seal and opening the document or goods, the seal impressions were kept in the appropriate archive as an accounting document. In other words, one could say that Armenia's first customs house was discovered in Artashat. Three such archives have been discovered in the excavations of Artashat, dating back to the 1st, 2nd, and 4th centuries AD, and containing about 10,000 samples of this kind of bulas. In 1904 BC, the 40-year-old crown Prince Tigran, held hostage in the Parthian court, paid a ransom of 70 valleys from the southeastern regions of Armenia and ascended the throne of Artaxerxes. During his reign, for military, economic, and also propaganda reasons of state prestige and power, Tigran abundantly issued silver and copper coins in the cities of his empire with the image of the king wearing a distinctive side. On the other side of the coins were messages reflecting divine favor and protection expressed in the iconography characteristic of Hellenistic coins, while the great inscriptions that belonged to Tigran king for years ago historical value with portraits of Armenian.
Oh boy. Bear with us for a minute while we reattach Nzhdeh. Nzhdeh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry for that. Do you listen to me now?
I hear you, but I don't see you. Your connection must have failed. You're back now, though.
Can I? Yeah, can I continue now? Sorry for
Yes,
that.
please do.
Copper coins issued about 2,000 years ago are of exceptional historical value, with portraits of the Armenian king and queen on the obverse, and on the reverse, the sacred mountain for Armenians, Masis or Ararat, as it appears from the capital Artashat. At the beginning of the 1st century AD, the Arshakid dynasty was established in Armenia, and with the 40-year peace treaty signed in the city of Nisibis in 298, Sassanid Iran recognized the Arshakid kingdom in Greater Armenia and Rome's patronage over it. During the reign of Tiridates III, the country enjoyed peace and prosperity, and it was during the reign of Tiridates III that Armenia became the first nation to declare Christianity as the state religion in 301. According to the tradition, the Armenian Church has apostolic origins, founded by the apostles Thaddeus and Bartholomew. After Christianity was declared the state religion in Armenia, the absence of church literature in the Armenian language, and especially the reading of the Bible in Syriac and Greek, made it impossible for the general population to become familiar with Christian doctrine. In such a complex period, at the end of the 4th century, having writing and literature in the native language became a national preservation issue, as the written Armenian language was a vital necessity for both the state and the church. Mesrop Mashtots was entrusted with the task of creating one of the most powerful manifestations of Armenian identity, the alphabet. In 405 AD, in Edessia, Mashtots, according to tradition, created the Armenian alphabet through a divine vision. And in addition to manuscripts, the first Armenian texts are preserved in inscriptions carved on monastery walls. One of the first stone inscriptions dates from the 5th century and is located on the western entrance facade of Saint Sarkis Church in Tekor. The image presented here is a replica of this inscription, which has exceptional importance and value as an original sample, since the temple of Tekor, which was located in the Kars region, was completely destroyed after 1920. The inhabitants of the surrounding villages tore stones from the walls and used them. In other words, the original inscription no longer exists. The Armenian prince Ashot Bagratuni officially established the Bagratuni Armenian kingdom in 888. He received royal crowns from the Byzantine Empire and the Arab Caliphate and bore the title Prince of Princes. In 961, Ashot III moved the capital to Ani, which was an Armenian cultural, political, and economic center. Ani was an important point on the global Silk Trade Road. Not only historical sources speak of the city's wealth and development, but also the findings of regular excavations conducted by Nikolai Marr since the late 19th century. How the excavations were organized here and how a museum was created is a separate story that deserves its own lecture. Thanks to the efforts of Marr, Kalantar, Gaygin Nzhdeh, and other dedicated individuals, these excavations were barely saved from the Turkish attacks on 1980, and the 2,344 rescued objects are now on one of the most valuable and fundamental collections of the History Museum of Armenia. To introduce the city of Ani, I'll show you the works of the famous Armenian painter Bashin Jagyan, which were depicted in such detail that they became important historical documents. I present to you this silk dress of a small child which was discovered in the tomb of Princess Tigran Honets. This is an important evidence of the life, clothing, and daily life of the city. One of the important exhibits from this period is the coin of Kurike II issued by Bagratuni branch of the Lori Kingdom and the only Bagratuni monetary issue that has reached us. It is the first coin with Armenian letters and appeared after the Ani kingdom left the historical arena. And finally, the last example from Ani that I will present to you is the statue of King Gagik I Bagratuni, found during excavations of the Gagkashan church in Ani, holding a model of the church in his hand. This is the second replica I mentioned at the beginning. The original statue was discovered during excavations in the 90s and was displayed in the Ani Museum. Unfortunately, Ashkarbek Kalantar couldn't save the sculpture in 1918, and on his initiative it was hidden underground. Today the fate of the sculpture is unknown. The replica of the statue was made in 1991 and is currently located near the entrance of the History Museum of Armenia. In 1198, Prince Levon II was solemnly crowned King of Armenia in the Saint Sophia Cathedral in the city of Tarsus in Cilicia. From 11th to 1375, thousands of silver and copper coins of the Armenian kings who ruled in Cilicia have come down to us. After the fall of Cilician kingdom at the end of the 14th century, in the absence of statehood, the church played an important role in preserving Armenian culture, history, and identity. In 1441, the Catholic Church of all Armenian was established in Echmiadzin. Although Armenia was periodically at the epicenter of wars between other states in the region, culture continued to develop there in parallel, one of the best examples being the city of Juga or Julfa in the territory of Nakhichevan. One of the best testimonies of my statement is the field of Khachkars or crossstones. The Khachkars of Juga, with their unique spatial and compositional solutions, technical craftsmanship, and unprecedented quantity are a classical example of a unique cultural rise in the 15th, 17th centuries. Unfortunately, some of them, more than 10,000 Khachkars were destroyed during the Soviet years, and most of them were completely destroyed by the Azerbaijani army in 2005, 2006. Fortunately, about 20 Khachkars were saved during the Soviet years, and one of which is now in the History Museum of Armenia. The Armenian colonies, which began in the early Middle Ages and lasted for centuries, are among the important factors that complete the history of the Armenian people and characterize its uniqueness, especially in the 11th to 14th centuries and later in the 15th, from 15th to 18th centuries. The population exodus became widespread, and as a result, Armenian colonies were established in various near and far countries. There were Armenian settlements in the Crimea, in the countries of southeastern Europe, in Constantinople, Jerusalem, and in commercial cities of Syria and Iran. Armenian culture developed actively in these colonies, one of the best examples of which are these famous eggs-shaped pendant made by Armenian masters in Kütahya. One of the tragic pages of Armenian history is the late 19th and early 20th centuries. is the Armenian genocide organized by Ottoman Turkey, which claimed the lives of 1.5 million Armenians. The presented tapestry with the image of a woman was woven during the exile route in from 1915 to 1918. Another important artifact related to the genocide is the bead necklace on display, which has 99 beads engraved with the surnames and sometimes first names of Armenian intellectuals who were arrested in Constantinople on April 24, 1950 and exiled to Chankirli. Among them were Komitas Vartapet, Ruben Sevak, Daniel Varujan, and others. The door of the Mesho Arakelos monastery speaks of the cultural genocide that took place alongside the physical genocide. It was saved through the efforts of Asharbek Kalantar and Sambat Teravetisyan and transferred to the History Museum of Armenia, the first years of Soviet period. The years following the genocide saw a brief but important period of restoration of the long-standing Armenian dream of statehood. The First Republic of Armenia, which lasted about 2 years, managed to establish all state symbols, a parliament, and several governments. The museum preserves the coat of arms of the First Republic of Armenia and one of the flags of the First Republic of Armenia. And the displayed flag standard and the part of the tassels are original parts of the flag of the First Republic, which were donated to the History Museum of Armenia by the daughter of Prime Minister Hovhannes Khajazmuni, Margot Khajazmuni. This republic was the result of a long struggle and devotion, which, in addition to the political struggle, included a phase of armed resistance by the Fidains. And one of the figures who embodied this struggle is General Andranik Ozanyan, whose collection in the museum is very extensive. But I'm presenting to you the diamond-studded sword, which was dedicated to Andranik by Egyptian Armenians, and which Andranik later gave to the History Museum of Armenia. On November 29, 1920, the Revolutionary Committee of Armenia, with the help of the 11th Red Army, entered Yerevan from Azerbaijan and proclaimed the Soviet power in the country. On December 2, 1920, an agreement of the Sovietization of Armenia was signed. This was the beginning of the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. For about 70 years as a part of the Soviet Union, Armenia's economy, culture, and social life underwent uneven development. In the 1980s, the country faced radical changes, during which the Karabakh movement began in 1989. New elections were held and a new parliament was elected, which undertook the creation of an independent statehood. Unfortunately, especially after genocide and the Sovietization of Armenia, a significant portion of Armenians settled outside of Armenia, forming the Armenian diaspora. Both during the Soviet years and after the declaration of Armenian independence, Armenia has always maintained close ties with the diaspora. One of the best examples of these connections, the history of the diaspora and general story of personal dedication, diligence, and success is the Nobel Prize medal that Dr. Artem Pataputian donated to the museum a few years ago and which occupies an important place in the museum's exhibition. In the last years of Soviet rule, in February 1988, the Council of Peoples of Deputies of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast submitted a request to the Supreme Councils of Soviet Armenia and the Azerbaijan SSR to resolve the issue of the inclusion of the NKO into Armenia. The Supreme Council of the Azerbaijan SSR rejected the request of the Artsakh people, and the Artsakh movement or Karabakh movement began, which developed into a national struggle. As a result of ensuing Artsakh War on September 2, 1991, the Declaration of Independence of Artsakh was adopted. This commemorative medal dedicated to the independence of Artsakh was minted in limited quantities in Lyon in 1993. The permanent presence of Armenians in Artsakh was interrupted first by the 44-day war in 2020 and then by the Azerbaijan aggression in September 2023, when the Armenians were forced to leave their settlements. On August 23, 1990, the Supreme Council of Armenia adopted the Declaration on the Independence of Armenia. On September 21, 1991, the absolute majority of the referendum participants voted for independence. On September 23, the Supreme Council proclaimed the Republic of Armenia an independent state. On August 23, 1990, the first session of the Supreme Council of Armenia adopted the Declaration of Independence of Armenia, which marked the beginning of Armenia's independence process. The museum also houses the Triumvirate, which actively participated in the demonstrations of the Karabakh movement and whose sound constantly conveyed notes of unity to the participants of these demonstrations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Nzhdeh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to make it. Okay, stop participant sharing. Very good. So again, encourage you to use the Zoom Q&A if you have questions, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Nzhdeh, I didn't actually keep count if that was 30 objects or not, but I'm wondering how you managed to. I'm sure you started with a much larger list and you gradually worked your way down. So I wanted to ask you, what is the one thing that you left out that you most regret not being able to include in this group?
To be honest, just before answering you, do you see me or my screen now?
Yes, you're on screen.
Okay. To be honest, the archaeological collection of Armenia, of the history, is quite huge. And it was really difficult for me to mostly choose from archaeological part. And unfortunately, I leave a lot of objects and from our collection and don't include in this presentation. And maybe it is a good reason to welcome all our participants to the museum to see this huge collection. And the most importance of one of the most importance of the collection is that they are found during excavations, and they are found in situ, in their original situation. So it gives a lot of information, both scientific and just public information about this society and this culture. I can't speak directly which object I leave and don't include here because there are a lot.
Hey, it's asking you to pick your favorite. I know that's not fair. Question from one of the viewers. Apart from the Behistun inscription in Iran, which refers to the two-handled jug, are there any references to earlier objects by early Armenian historians or anyone else? I assume that means to earlier objects that can be specifically identified in the museum or similar to items in the museum.
This joke which I presented is parallel to the period when Behisun inscription was created. But you know what is the most interesting and important part of collection? That yes, archaeology of Armenia, excavations of Armenia, and mostly our collection shows the continuation of culture starting from early Bronze Age, at least start from early Bronze Age till other periods. I mean, the ornaments, the shape of vessels, and different objects. For example, you can meet the same ornaments in early Bronze Age vessels and also Iron Age. You can see we see other parallels also in early vessels.
Nzhdeh, you're breaking up a bit.
Briefly, I can say that yes, we see the parallels also.
Broken up. All right, we will get him back and
Sorry for that. I haven't this problem before that. Briefly, I want to answer that yes, we see the parallels of that kind of, not only that vessels, but that kind of vessels also in earlier period of from different monuments of Armenia.
question. I realize you've been away from the museum now for some months while you've been a Fulbright scholar, but what are some of the most exciting recent additions to the museum collections that you would like to mention?
Oh, very important and interesting question. One of the last objects that museum received, I want to special thanks to family of Zoravar Andranik Ozanyan, that they bring some of personal objects from Zoravar Andranik to the museum. And I also want to thank to our colleagues from Marcel from Aram Archive. Just a week ago opened a very interesting and important exhibition, temporary exhibition in the History Museum of Armenia with collaboration of our colleagues of Marcel Aram Archive, which presented resilience of Armenian genocide. We settled in Marcel in Camp Edu, and there we're glad to give to our collection some of these materials. And I can say that it is very important for us, firstly, because of course our collection reached by these materials, and secondly, that as I said, the connection with the different communities of Armenian diaspora still continues in very high level, and will receive important materials of our history and culture from different communities of our Armenian diaspora, and thanks to our colleagues for that.
There are several questions about the, and perhaps this is more closely related to the other talk you gave for us a couple of months ago, but nevertheless, regarding objects from the Artsakh Museum, the main Artsakh Museum, but since I know you're familiar with the state of other museums that were in Artsakh, can you speak at least generally about the location, condition, the situation with these museum collections, please?
As we speak about this problem a month ago, I will save your time and say that approximately from 40 private collections, museums. Most of them left, and we don't know any information about these collections because they are in territory of Artsakh now, and the Azerbaijani government don't allow not UNESCO delegation and also other international organizations to organize the monitoring of the situation there. Some of the museums, mostly private collections and family heritage parts, and also some of the museum collections, as much as I know, were evacuated by the government of Artsakh. But the current, as they announced it, they are in safe. But I am not sure in which place they are situated now. But as they say, they are safe.
Thank you. There are also questions about obviously the objects you showed us today have been digitized because you were able to show us digital images of them. But are these digital images of these objects accessible through the museum's website?
Both in a museum, some of them are accessible in museum website. But also there are a huge platform of Armenian museums called Treasury.am, where you can meet not only of Armenia, but also different institutions and different museums of Armenia. The collection is really huge. I can say that most of them, but the most important objects are digitalized and they are in the most important objects on the website. Yes, now you can find it, and also in Treasury.am platform you can find it.
Okay, your connection is a little bit failing us again, but I'm going to attempt one more question, Nzhdeh. It's regarding the Arteshesian boundary stones. What language are those inscribed in? Can you answer that?
Yes, they are in Aramaic.
Aramaic. Yeah.
Aramaic, yes.
All right. Given the delicacy of the connection, I think we will have to end there. Nzhdeh is going to come back at least long enough to be thanked by all of us.
Really sorry for that.
That's okay, Nzhdeh, no worries. I will take it as a signal that it is time for us to wind down our webinar. I want to thank you, of course, for presenting this great display of amazing objects. And obviously, we want to encourage everybody who hasn't, and even if you already have, to go visit the History Museum in Yerevan. Of course, we want to thank Maggie and our friends at the Art Eskijen Museum, and go visit them as well. They have wonderful objects of their own that you need to go see. We hope to see you again in the future, Nzhdeh, whether in person or online, giving yet another presentation. I know you've got a lot more to say about a lot of different things, and we thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for your attention today. We hope to see you in the future online or in person. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.